Let's talk about a virus with a name that, well, it brings up a special kind of primal fear, right? Rabies. For centuries, it was just a horrifying, guaranteed death sentence. But we're not here to focus on the fear. We're going to take it apart piece by piece so we can understand exactly how it works and, more importantly, how we learn to beat it. So right off the bat, you have this insane paradox, one of the most extreme you'll find in all of medicine. If you wait until you see symptoms, it's pretty much 100% fatal. But if you act fast after you're exposed, it's also pretty much 100% preventable. How can something be both a guaranteed death sentence and almost completely survivable? Well, figuring that out is what this is all about. So to understand how we defeat this thing, we first have to get to know our enemy. Let's get a look at the virus itself. Well, okay, I know this looks really technical, but let's just zero in on what really matters. The most important detail here is its shape. You can see it has this very distinct bullet-like structure, and it's what we call an enveloped virus. That means it's sneaky. It wraps itself in an outer layer that it literally steals from the host cells it infects. It's the perfect disguise. And tucked inside that disguise is its entire game plan, a single strand of RNA. Now, sticking out of that stolen envelope are these things called glycoprotein spikes, or G proteins. These are the keys the virus uses to unlock and break into our cells. But here's the kicker. This key is also its biggest weakness. These spikes are the one thing our immune system can actually see and learn to attack, and that makes them the absolute bullseye for our vaccines. And this is where things get really fascinating. See, out in nature, you have what's called the street virus. That's the wild, dangerous version that makes animals and people sick. But in the lab, scientists created what they called the fixed virus. By passing it through lab cultures over and over again, they basically tamed it. They weakened it so it couldn't cause the deadly disease or even get into the salivary glands anymore. And this fixed version is what became the foundation for the life-saving vaccines we have today. Okay, so how does this whole invasion happen? After a bite, the virus doesn't just explode into action. No, instead it starts this really slow, methodical, and silent journey deep into our nervous system. That time between the bite and the first symptom, that's the incubation period. And for rabies, it is famously long and totally unpredictable. It's usually somewhere between 20 and 90 days. But get this, in some really rare cases, it's been known to last as long as 19 years. A huge factor here is just real estate. A bite on your face means a much shorter trip to the brain than a bite on your foot. The virus has a 5-step playbook. Step 1, inoculation. It gets in through the bite. Step 2, replication. It hangs out in the muscle tissue nearby and builds up its numbers. Then comes the masterstroke, the nerve hijack. The virus finds one of our peripheral nerves and starts traveling backwards up into the spinal cord. Once it hits the brain, it's game on. It spreads like wildfire. And for the final act, it travels back out from the brain to the salivary glands, ready to jump to a new host. And this is it, the whole journey laid out. You can literally trace it from the bite wound, see it building its army in the muscle, and then watch it start that long, slow climb. It turns our own nervous system into a one-way highway, and the destination is the brain. From there, it makes the return trip to the salivary glands, locking and loading for the next victim. It's a terrifyingly brilliant piece of evolution. So why on earth is that incubation period so long? It all comes down to this number. The virus crawls up our nerves at a snail's pace, about 2.5 centimeters or roughly 1 inch per day. That incredibly slow journey is the virus's one big vulnerability. It gives us a window of opportunity, a chance to act. It's a race against the clock for sure, but a race we can absolutely win. So what happens when the virus wins that race? What happens when it finally hits the brain? This is where the silent journey ends, and the horrifying symptoms begin to show up. Once it gets going, the disease plays out in 4 phases. After that long incubation where you feel nothing, you hit the prodrome phase. You feel kind of flu-like, but a big clue can be a weird pain or tingling right at the site of the original bite. From there, you enter the acute neurologic phase. That's where the really bad stuff happens, and that leads, inevitably, to coma and death. In that neurologic phase, the disease usually takes one of 2 forms. About 80% of the time, it's furious rabies. This is the one we all picture, with the agitation, the confusion, and that famous hydrophobia. The other 20% of cases are paralytic rabies. It's much quieter, but it's just as deadly. It's just a slow, creeping paralysis that starts at the bite and spreads through the body. This quote really gets to the truth of hydrophobia. It's not a fear of water at all. It's that the virus attacks the nerves that control the throat so severely that swallowing becomes agonizing. The pain is so bad that just the thought of drinking,
or the sight or sound of water is enough to trigger these horrible spasms. It's a diabolical way for the virus to make sure its main method of transport, saliva, isn't getting washed away.
And here it is. This is the most important, most sobering fact about rabies. Once you see clinical symptoms, the game is over. The infection is, for all intents and purposes, 100% fatal. There's no cure, no antiviral drug, no second chance. And it's that grim reality that means our entire strategy has to be about one thing, and one thing only: prevention.
Okay? We know the virus is slow, and we know that once symptoms show up, it is too late. This sets up a very clear race against time. So, how do we win it? This is the playbook.
You might be surprised to learn that our first and best line of defense is this simple: soap and water. Why? Because the rabies virus, with that stolen fatty envelope, is actually really fragile. Detergents, like soap, completely tear it apart. So the single most important thing you can do right after a potential exposure is to scrub that wound with soap and water for a good 10-15 minutes. It's about as low-tech as you can get, but it is incredibly effective.
The official medical response is called post-exposure prophylaxis, or PEP, and it's built on 3 pillars. First, that aggressive wound cleaning we just talked about. Second is what we call passive immunization. This is an injection of human rabies immune globulin, or HRIG, and it's given right at the wound site. It's basically a delivery of pre-made antibodies that go to work immediately. And third is active immunization, a course of the modern rabies vaccine, which teaches your own body to build a powerful, long-lasting immunity.
Now, for people in high-risk jobs, think veterinarians, lab workers, certain travelers, there's also pre-exposure prophylaxis, or PrEP. The absolute best way to think about PrEP is like a seatbelt. It doesn't stop you from getting in a car crash, but it makes the crash way more survivable. If someone who's had PrEP gets bitten, they still need to get treated, but the treatment is much, much simpler. They don't need that big shot of immune globulin, and they need fewer vaccine doses because their body's already been primed to fight back.
So after going through the virus, the disease, and how we fight it, what is the one single thing you need to walk away with?
It really all boils down to this. You know that old saying, prevention is better than a cure? Well, when it comes to rabies, that's not quite right. Because there is no cure for symptomatic rabies, prevention is the only cure. Those life-saving steps of post-exposure prophylaxis are the only way to survive. It is a race we are totally equipped to win, but only if we start running the second that gun goes off.
And that leaves you with a pretty powerful thought, doesn't it? The sheer, abject terror of this virus was a catalyst. It forced science to evolve, to come up with brilliant solutions out of pure necessity. It really makes you wonder, what's the next great challenge out there that's going to be the catalyst for tomorrow's big medical breakthrough?